I never thought a joyful family gathering could become the darkest memory of my life. That day started like any other casual weekend: sunny skies, light breeze, and the kind of laughter that only a close-knit family can generate. Invited everyone to his farmhouse on the outskirts of the city. It was meant to be just a small, cozy get-together with food, fun, and a touch of nostalgia. My family, that Aaliyah and I, were engaged. Quietly, without much ceremony, we had exchanged rings 3 weeks prior. She wanted to wait until the moment felt right, and to me, this family evening felt perfect. Aaliyah was everything I ever wanted: graceful, intelligent, and kind. We met at university during a volunteer project and had been together for over 2 years. I trusted her, and I trusted that when the world saw us together, they would feel the love we carried so deeply for each other. That night, as we drove to the farmhouse, she looked breathtaking. Her soft pink dress fluttered slightly with the air conditioning, and her eyes sparkled like she knew something magical was about to happen. I held her hand and whispered, "Ready?" She smiled. "Always." The family welcomed us warmly. My mother hugged me, my father gave me a proud pat on the back, and my younger cousins dragged us into light-hearted games and snacks. Then came my brother Kushif. He had been away for months, apparently trying to find himself in some job far from home. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and honestly, I missed him. He was always the charming one, confident, extroverted, and slightly reckless, but I never imagined he could be dangerous to the point of betrayal. When he arrived, everyone cheered. Mom was thrilled. Kashif came straight to me, hugged me tight, and said, "Missed you, bro." Something in his eyes flickered like he was sizing me up. But I ignored it. I had too much joy in my own world to pay attention to his weird energy. We all settled for dinner, plates full of biryani and kebabs, and just as I was about to stand and make the announcement about our engagement, he did something that froze the room. He tapped his spoon against his glass and said, "Can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" We all turned to look at him. I figured maybe he was going to announce something about his work, or maybe make a toast. But then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, walked over to Aaliyah, and got down on one knee. I stopped breathing. "Aaliyah," he said, his voice loud and dramatic, "I've loved you from the moment I first saw you. I left because I couldn't bear seeing you with someone else. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again. Will you marry me?" There was a stunned silence. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Aaliyah's eyes widened in horror. "What are you doing?" she stuttered, clearly shocked. Everyone looked at me, waiting for my reaction. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I stood up, trying to process what had just happened. My entire body trembled, not out of fear, but rage, humiliation, disbelief. And before I could say a word, my mother clapped her hands and laughed awkwardly. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. It's just young love." Then she looked at me and added coldly, "Don't be cruel. Let them be happy." In that moment, I realized I was utterly alone in a room full of people I thought I could trust. The person I loved was being taken from me, publicly, by my own brother. And my own mother, was calling me cruel for reacting. I stood there in a daze as the echoes of my mother's words sank in. "Don't be cruel," she had said, like I was the villain, like I had just tried to ruin someone's fairy tale. My hands were clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms and my jaw locked in a way that made my temples throb. But even with all that pain, I couldn't bring myself to say anything, not yet. There was too much noise in my head and too many eyes on me. I felt like the walls were closing in, and I was the centerpiece of a sick show. Everyone else had tickets. Aaliyah stood frozen, visibly shaken, her hands trembling by her side. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She didn't say anything. That silence was louder than any answer. She looked at me, then at Kashif, then down at the ring. Her lips parted, but words never made it out. The moment dragged on for what felt like a century. And then she did the worst thing possible. She ran *. She turned and darted through the crowd and out the front door, disappearing into the garden. I could hear her heels clicking on the stone path, her breath unsteady, breaking. I wanted to go after her, but my feet didn't move. My brain didn't cooperate. I was still trying to convince myself that this couldn't be happening, that this had to be some kind of elaborate joke that had gone too far. But no one was laughing. Not really. Kashif stood back up, slowly, the ring box still in his hand. The smugness on his face had faded slightly, replaced by a confused, maybe even frustrated expression. He looked around, waiting for anyone to defend him. Our aunt awkwardly patted him on the shoulder, like someone trying to comfort a child who'd just dropped his ice cream. My father didn't say anything, just kept eating like nothing had happened. That part burned almost as much as my mother's words. I didn't mean for it to go this way, Kashif mumbled under his breath, more to himself than to anyone else. I finally found my voice then, hoarse and cracked. What the hell is wrong with you? I said, loud enough to cut through the murmurs in the room. Did you really think this would end well? Did you think this would be some kind of grand romantic gesture? He didn't answer me. He didn't even look at me. That was when I realized the truth. He hadn't thought about me at all. This wasn't about love. This was about conquest. About one-upping me. About proving something. That he could have what I had. That he could take what I had. I was trying to be honest. He finally said, shrugging. I've loved her for a long time. I thought maybe she felt the same way. That was it. That was his defense. Not an apology. Not regret. Just a selfish confession wrapped in delusion. My mouth opened, then closed. I couldn't even find words strong enough to match the betrayal I felt. I turned and walked out of the room without another word. I didn't want to cry in front of them. I didn't want them to see how broken I was. Outside, I found Aliyah sitting on a stone bench beneath the big oak tree. Her head was in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I sat beside her, and we didn't speak for a long while, just silence. Shared pain, and the faint sound of celebration continuing behind us, as if our world hadn't just collapsed. When Aliyah finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red and swollen, and I could see the guilt etched deeply into her expression. I swear, she whispered, I didn't know he felt that way. He never said anything to me. Her voice cracked halfway through, and I could tell she was being honest. She was just as blindsided as I was, and yet the ache in my chest refused to subside, because now the doubt had been planted. Now I was left wondering, had there ever been a moment, even the tiniest flicker, where she might have entertained the idea of him? I hated that my mind went there. I hated that betrayal did this to people, turned them against the very ones they loved most. It made you question memories, rewrite stories, reframe moments that once felt pure. I remembered the time Kashif had visited us a year ago, when Aliyah and I had just started dating. They had talked about books, laughed about a movie I hadn't seen. I didn't think much of it back then, but now I wondered if his charm had always had a target. If I'd been too blind to trusting ... I believe you, I told her eventually. And I did. She wasn't the one who made the proposal. She wasn't the one who broke the bond of brotherhood. But still, she hadn't stopped him right away either. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't pushed him away. She had frozen that silence. That hesitation felt like a betrayal in its own way. But I couldn't blame her for reacting like a deer in headlights. She was ambushed, publicly, emotionally, and by someone she barely knew in that way. We sat there for nearly half an hour, saying little, thinking much. The cool night air wrapped around us, and somewhere in the distance, laughter and music floated from the house like nothing had happened, as if the people inside were determined to pretend everything was fine. My own parents included. Returned inside, I expected anyone to ask how we were, to apologize, to address the elephant in the room. But instead, people avoided our eyes. A few cousins offered weak smiles. One aunt asked if we wanted dessert. My mother didn't even look at me. She was sitting beside Kashif, holding his hand, like he was the one who needed comfort. That was when I realized the depth of the chasm between me and my family. It wasn't just what had happened, it was how easily they accepted it, how quickly they were willing to make me the antagonist. Just because I had dared to react, because I had dared to be angry. My brother had humiliated me, proposed to my fiancée, and disrupted my relationship, and yet they pitied him, like he was the broken-hearted one. I felt something inside me break, then not loudly, not violently, just a quiet snap. A string of connection that had held me to this family, this home. It didn't sever completely, not yet, but it frayed like a worn rope that couldn't take much more tension. And I knew something had changed forever.
I couldn't sleep that night. Aaliyah left early, saying she needed time to think, and I didn't stop her. I didn't know what to say, or what I was even supposed to feel. The world had shifted beneath me, and I was still struggling to regain balance. My own blood, my brother, had thrown a grenade into my life, and no one seemed to care that I was the one bleeding. So I stayed at the farmhouse, pacing the floor, until the sun started to rise and the early light stretched across the tiled hallways like a silent reckoning. I waited for Kashif to wake up. I wanted to give him the chance to say something, to apologize, to admit what he did was cruel. But when he finally emerged from the guest room, shirtless, yawning, rubbing sleep from his eyes, like he had just returned from a vacation, something inside me snapped. I stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, heart hammering in my chest. "You slept well?" I asked, voice tight. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "I did. You destroyed my relationship yesterday. You proposed to my fiancée, and then you went to bed like nothing happened." Kashif scratched his jaw and gave me a look that hovered between annoyance and confusion. "Man, you're being dramatic. I didn't destroy anything. If your relationship was so solid, she would have rejected me outright. That was it." That sentence so smug, so self-righteous lit the fire. I stepped closer, fists clenched. "You didn't just test our relationship. You betrayed me. You humiliated me in front of our family. And you did it knowing exactly how I felt about her. What the hell is wrong with you?" He shrugged. "I loved her too." "No," I said. "You wanted her. That's not the same as love." He fell silent for a moment, the words hitting him harder than I expected. But then he laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "You've always thought you were better than me, haven't you? The responsible one, the favorite. I just thought maybe I deserved something for once." "You don't deserve what someone else already has," I said sharply. "You take what's yours. You don't steal from your own blood." At that moment, my mother entered the room. She had clearly overheard part of the conversation. "That's enough," she said sternly. "You boys need to stop this fighting." I turned to her, incredulous. "You still think I'm the problem?" She hesitated, but her eyes betrayed her. She wasn't going to take my side. She never did when it came to Kashif. "He made a mistake," she said carefully, "but you don't need to make it worse." That was it. My rage gave way to cold resolve. Then I guess I'm done trying to be part of a family that doesn't understand what loyalty means. I packed my things that afternoon. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence I left behind was loud enough to echo through the hallways. I didn't even say goodbye to my father. He had watched the whole scene unfold, and chose silence over spine. I was done begging for validation from people who treated my pain like an overreaction. Aaliyah called me the next evening. She'd been crying. I could hear it in her voice. "I didn't know how to handle it," she whispered. "I was scared, embarrassed, confused." "I don't blame you," I said honestly, "but I need to know something. Did you ever feel anything for him?" "No," she answered instantly. "Never. I swear. I loved you. I still do." Her words felt like a bomb on an open wound. "But wounds don't close that easily then. Why didn't you reject him immediately?" I froze. She said, "You don't know what it's like to be blindsided like that in front of everyone." I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I believed her, but I also knew that something fundamental had changed. Not because I didn't love her anymore, but because the safe space we had built, the trust, the certainty, had been violated. In public, and the cracks couldn't be ignored. "I think we need time," I told her. "Not because I don't care, but because I need to find myself again, before I can be anything to anyone else." She didn't argue. She understood. That made it hurt even more. I moved into a small apartment across town, took a few days off work, cut off contact with most of my family. Kashif texted once, a weak attempt at justification, but I didn't respond. My mother left voicemails about forgiveness and healing, but I deleted them without listening. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of pretending everything could go back to normal. Because it couldn't. Weeks passed. The whispers in the family started to shift. At first, people called me dramatic, said I should have gotten over it. But as time went on, people started asking questions. Why had Kashif done it? Why didn't anyone stop him? Why did everyone sit by and watch? Eventually, even my father called and admitted he could have handled things differently. Kashif lost the sympathy he had enjoyed at first. When people realized Aaliyah had disappeared from all family functions, when it became clear she had chosen distance over drama, they started turning on him, not with rage, just quiet disappointment. The kind that lingers. The kind that stays in the air and stains your name. He tried to act like he didn't care, but I knew him. His confidence had always been a mask, and now, it was slipping. People saw through him. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And even if no one said it out loud, he wasn't the golden child anymore. As for me, I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer for his fall. I just focused on healing. I started going to therapy, not just for the incident, but to understand why I had spent so long trying to earn love from people who treated it as a prize instead of a promise. I started writing again, hiking, spending time with friends who asked how I really felt. Aaliyah and I met for coffee a month later. We talked for hours. We didn't make promises. We didn't jump back in. We just talked. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild something. Whether with her or with myself, I didn't know. But I was open to trying. The phrase my mother had used that night, "Don't be cruel," stayed with me. At first, it haunted me. But over time, I began to reclaim it. I wasn't cruel for reacting to betrayal. I wasn't cruel for demanding respect. I wasn't cruel for walking away from people who treated my pain like a nuisance. I was human. And what if I didn't stay silent? And what if I showed my anger? And what if I chose myself for once? The truth is, families fail us sometimes. They expect us to swallow our hurt for the sake of harmony. But real harmony doesn't come from silence, it comes from truth. And my truth is this: I loved deeply. I was hurt profoundly. And I rose anyway. So if anyone asks me what happened that night, I'll tell them. My brother proposed to my fiancée in front of everyone. I reacted. My mom called me cruel. And what I survived. And I'll say it not with shame, but with strength.